So, it's been a while since I've done a video like this, because what we're going to be talking about today is that I'm going to be covering the volume extras for My Hero Academia Volume 40. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Andrew, and like I said, I'm going to be covering the volume extras for My Hero Academia Volume 40. And there is a lot that we need to go over. And just to let you know, the reasoning why I didn't go over it at first was because when the information was coming out, it was during a time where the leaks and the spoilers were being heavily criticized and scrutinized to the point where they couldn't be up for long. So I was unable to get both that information as well as the translations to them. But now that they're out officially in English, I'm able to provide you with the information for the volume extras themselves. And because it's now out in English, I just have to recommend you to go out and buy the actual manga itself to support Horikoshi and the work that he has created via My Hero Academia. And once you have that material, you can just come back to this video and just see me talk about what I think about the volume extras in volume 40, because there's a lot of stuff that I want to discuss because a lot of interesting things are confirmed within the volume extras. But with that, let's just dive right into it and really talk about it a little bit more. And to start off, we have the cover, which is just a representation of Bakugo in the background and All Might in his armored All Might suit. It just looks very cool. Nothing to really emphasize with the actual cover itself. It looks amazing, and it's going to have the continuing theme of amazing covers for the rest of the series moving forward. So that's something else that I want to go over. But then we also have like a few like more tidbits of information. We see the author's comment, which is, "Thanks for picking up volume 40. All Might is my hero," by Kohei Horikoshi. And we also have to come to a realization that the information that we're going to be getting is going to be relative to when it was actually released in the Japanese volume, which came out approximately a year ago. So just keep that in mind. But then we also have the smaller pieces of information, such as like the index, where we get to see the titles for chapters 399 all the way up to 410, as well as just to understand what is coming from. The title of the volume derives its actual name from the same volume or the same chapter with the similar name from chapter 403, which is when Bakugo pretty much comes back to life and involves himself in the fight against All For One alongside Deku against Tomoe Shigaraki. So that's cool. As well as we do get the title page, like I said, the end of an era. And what's very interesting about this is that when this page was actually made, it was during the time where Akira Toriyama had recently passed, and this is sort of an homage to a similar page of Goku and Frieza doing a very similar pose. So that's something cool. I love that Horikoshi was able to do that in honor of Akira Toriyama, because Dragon Ball is most likely one of his like favorite mangas ever. So I'm glad that he did this homage in volume 40, not just for the actual volume itself, but also to homage or be a homage to Akira Toriyama, rest in peace. But from there, we also get just another page that gives like a general summary of everything that has gone up to this point, as well as like the main players of this volume in very fun chibi food. All Might Tarot, All Might is a carrot, Midori Tart, I believe he is a tartar, like a potato. You have Bakugo as Pineapple-chan, Pineapple, that makes sense. Shigarakorn, okay, that's funny. And All For Plum as All For One. So, and what's very funny is that he has like the plum like face, even though he's like in his younger state. We show him as a plum because that's how we know him mostly by. So that's pretty much the like general information, as well as we are going to get like an assistance page where we get to see the assistants who are helping Horikoshi with the manga at the time, pretty much just very similar and in a symbolic like framing as the chapter where Bakugo comes in and saves All Might. So that's what that is referencing, so that's cool. As well as just, I'm gonna cover like a few more things. I'm going to be also covering like the spine, which is going to have, weirdly enough, it has, if I remember correctly, Sun Eater, but as well on the back, we get to see on the back like spine alongside another author's comment is just seeing All Might and his mother, which I'm very glad that Horikoshi included like his mother into this, as well as like the quote. I do not have the translation for this quote, unfortunately. From where I'm getting my information, that was not included, but most likely not is making reference to like what's going to be going on in the next cover or in the next volume. So that's pretty much what that actually is going to be saying. So we don't need to necessarily go into the details of that, but that's just the general vibe that's giving off in that one panel, or should I say page. But going from there, I also want to address some volume corrections. I'm not sure if I've brought this up in another video, but something that Horikoshi has done is he's made like edits or corrections to the volumes themselves, specifically to certain pages in the chapters. And we do have a very few volume corrections here, which is one of them is a correction on chapter 401, page 15, where a change to All Might is shown wearing his dynamite glove. The background is also completely drawn. So if you can tell from the differences in the panels, we know for a fact that All Might was able to give Bakugo the glove later on to reinforce his arm, but he forgot to draw it in the first release of the chapter, so he redrew it in the volume release, so that's cool. And this is going to be like a following theme when it comes to like the backgrounds of him like touching up the backgrounds when it comes to these volume pages, because the same can be said about chapter 407 from pages 10 to 12, where the backgrounds and the sky is fully drawn in, and All For One and Yoichi are touched up and or are fully shaded. So just making like slight corrections like that is very much what the volume extras, or should I say the volume like corrective pages do. But probably the most massive change is in chapter 409, the chapter before the final, which is pages 12 and 13, where there's a change where a double page spread of Katsuki is like added right before he attacks. All For One is added, and the dialogue is also moved to this spread. Basically, what is being said is that in the like original like paneling, you have a double page spread where you have like everything that's going on with like Hawks, and then Bakugo delivering a massive blow to All For One. The dialogue is moved to a completely brand new double page spread where that information is, to clean up the final page and to make it a little bit more dynamic, I would say. So I'm glad that Horikoshi does a lot of this, just making corrections and touch-ups, as well as just adding additional pages as well. And that's kind of the reason why chapter, or should I say volume 42, is such like an amazing thing, but still well in line with what Horikoshi does when it comes to that additional chapter. So that's pretty much like the smaller stuff that I wanted to get to. Now let's get to like the more important and more like bombastic and interesting things when it comes to just explanations for certain characters that Horikoshi wanted to elaborate a little bit more on. And before we actually get to that, we do have like a few things. Once again, we get another drawing of All Might and his mom, and how they are appreciating Yasase Sensei, the creator of Anya Ponman, which is a very popular Japanese like manga and anime that little kids like to watch, so that's cool. And we also get to see something else. We get Horikoshi recognizing another mangaka that is very near and dear to him when it comes to a contribution, and it's the contribution which is that we get another gift from Akiyama Sensei, the author of My Hero Academia Team Up Mission spinoff, and that thank you to her as always. And that on page 184 within like the volume itself, her to 184, basically we're going to be getting like a brand new drawing from her of Bakugo, which if you see it, it looks very amazing. And that he talks about a little bit more like, at last I've hit 40, not necessarily his age, but he means the number of volumes, and that at this point we've got to go on the offensive, pay due respect, buckle down, and see it through. That apples to me, Deku, and Shigaraki too. This applies to me, Deku, and Shigaraki too. Thank you to everyone who stuck with me this far on the journey. Hope you all show up again for the next volume, which most likely everyone will. So yeah, that was very cool. And alongside this, we also get like an additional like page of like a leaf flowing through the air, which is like a sort of running motif throughout like this final battle, of that leaf or those leaves representing like the wishing energy of everybody like wishing for like the success of the heroes and for All Might to live, which ties into Bakugo having just enough speed with all of the wishing energy to actually save All Might. So that's what this page is also representing. And wow, that's a lot. But now let's get to like the information that I really want to talk about, which is the behind the scenes. And this is actually tackling a organic mingling cluster of light. And we're getting a understanding of why the chapter title is named that way, which is that the chapter title is in reference to a line from the opening poem of Kinji Miyazawa's collection Spring and Strife, Haru to Shura. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned at some point that the nickname Deku is also a Kinji Miyawaza reference. That one comes from his poem Falter Not to the Rain, Amene mo Makazu. So that's very interesting. This is probably going to be a little bit lost on me because I'm not very versed in the Japanese like culture when it comes to their poem and their literature, but I like the fact that he uses references from like poems that he likes, not just for the character of Aoyama, which is what this chapter is referring to. I believe this is the chapter where we get Aoyama using his lasers alongside Hagakure to deliver like that massive blow on Kunita, as well as All Might using the laser on All for One. So that's what this chapter is referencing, and I'm glad that he gives a little bit more thought to the title of his chapters than you just saying, oh, X Battle Part 1 or X Battle Part 2, 3, 4. Not downing or like criticizing anyone for doing that. Some of my favorite mangaka and like series have done that, but I just like that each chapter of My Hero Academia has more of like a resonance to not just like the mangaka, the author itself, but also to the chapter and the characters in it. So that's cool. But he's like, anyway, this title was a good fit for a chapter about All Might and Aoyama, since like Deku, they both started out quirkless. Yeah, like I was saying, they're all related in one way or another. And he's like, incidentally, the second poem in Spring and Strife is one called Refraxive Index. Okay, see, it's just so many layers to just a singular title, as like it's often super obvious where my inspirations for things in My Hero Academia come from. Yeah, so like I said, I just love how Horikoshi is just very open about like, oh yeah, no, this very much inspired me. Oh yeah, this is something that I took from like this medium, and we're going to get into that a little bit more when it comes to his inspirations for like how he is writing his story. But speaking on Aoyama, let's talk about Hagakure. And so we do have some Hagakure extras, and this is something that I love because it's kind of like an idea that I had for why Hagakure's like hero costume is the way that it is, as well as the fact that I read My Hero Academia Vigilantes or My Hero Academia Illegals. And slight thing, if you want to see me talk more about My Hero Academia Illegals because the anime is coming out, let me know, as well as liking and subscribing to my videos if you want to see more content like that. All right, back to Hagakure. But yeah, I find it fascinating that Horikoshi basically comes out and says like, yeah, because Hagakure wasn't like visible up until now, she was able to like bypass like regulation about how much skin a hero costume is allowed to show. And that's kind of like the idea where if you read Vigilantes, you would know that Midnight had a costume where she would basically be in her birthday suit being covered by a trench, which here's the thing. That makes so much sense for her quirk because she has pheromones and like gases that like seep from her skin, and it just makes sense to like have your skin always exposed so you have access to it at all times. However, they're like, we cannot have like a teenage girl or a teenage boy running around naked, more skin restrictions. So yeah, that's why unfortunately Midnight couldn't do that. However, it's kind of like why you could have Hagakure running around naked, because guess what? She's not showing skin. So it's just like, yo, I can just wear gloves and boots and I'll be fine. But I also think it's kind of funny because she's invisible. She never really thought about that, which is why she's probably a little bit more comfortable being naked, because like she doesn't really get to see herself often and no one really gets to see her. So she doesn't get that sort of like embarrassment thing. Now, if someone touches her, like, of course she knows that she's invisible and she's naked when that happens, but like everything else, she's been pretty much like open and like happy and sporadic about it until like she becomes visible like within like this volume where she's like, yo, don't look at me, I'm visible. So it's fun that now she has to like deal with the idea of like, now that I'm visible, I may have to revisit like wearing like more skin because now she's very visible. But yeah, it also brings up the topic that was initially addressed because of Midnight's costume. So yeah, I'm glad that Horikoshi was able to like finally like address like how Hagakure can just walk around technically naked and it not be a problem. It's because she's invisible and is always invisible, so she never had to worry about it. So that's cool. And now let's get to some more of the final interesting aspects of the volume extras, starting off with Stain and ending with Bakugo. Also, something else that I forgot to bring up is that we have a sketch of a young All for One who looks approximately around 15 to 16 years old in this actual like image based off just the number here. And yeah, that's also something else that I forgot to bring up. So here we are. Now back to what I was talking about before. And with Stain, all we're getting is just the explanation of Stain's glider. And the glider Stain comes swooping down on is a piece of Detonarat tech he stole from some hooligans while roaming around. Horikoshi said that he intended to include a brief explanation about that, but the idea was scrapped when he ran out of page counts. And that when he decided to cut the content, he was like, no biggie, we'll just do it like Star Wars. And to explain what that means, he talks about how there's an enormous amount of supplementary Star Wars material that addresses the topics not explained in the mainline movies themselves. It's fascinating. You know what? That kind of explains why the volume extras for My Hero Academia are as detailed as they are. Now, I can't say the same thing for other manga. I know One Piece does something similar with like the Q&A section, but like this is completely different. This is like supplementary material that is technically not in the manga main story, but is like in it in a way where it's like, oh, this is like information that I couldn't add to the main story. Let me just add it to the volume extras. And we've seen him do this a lot within like the most recent volumes, and even in the past volumes when you have just character introductions being done in the volume extras before they were properly introduced within the manga itself. So I'm glad that Horikoshi is taking this aspect of Star Wars and adding it to My Hero Academia, which may be the explanation for like why there are so many spin-off series that are sort of pseudo-connected to My Hero Academia, from team-up missions to vigilantes, and how they can all fit within the bubble of My Hero Academia, also including the movies. And now we get to the final volume extra, which is about Katsuki. And the explanation is pretty much involving like why All for One was unable to use like Stain's like quirk to paralyze Bakugo before, you know, Bakugo completely and utterly brutalized him. And the explanation is that Katsuki's blood was getting blown around by the storm and blasted to who knows where, so All for One could never manage to lick any of it. The gifts that Deku, Katsuki, and Todoroki have received from All Might, in Todoroki's case, his words, have had a widespread impact. And that's very interesting, with Bakugo getting like the arm brace to like help him battle longer before his arm got destroyed, with Deku quite literally one for all, and Todoroki, which ironically enough also includes Ida, with the pep talk that All Might was able to give to them, which really just shows that All Might was like a mentor and teacher to all of them in different ways. And yeah, I really like that that was an explanation given in the volume extras. Also, one more thing that I forgot to bring up is the hand, specifically the hand that belonged to Yoichi that All for One was looking at within his own like flashback and Horikoshi just explains like, yeah, All for One somehow lost Yoichi's remaining hand during the era when he was put on the defensive by All Might. And that is very interesting because it implies that maybe the hand that he like gave to Shigaraki was not necessarily Yoichi's hands, because that's something that he wanted to keep on his person. But when he was fighting against like All Might, it was lost, most likely in the battle, because he probably kept it on him at all times, because while All for One is just a horrible piece of a monster, he still had this twisted way of caring for his younger brother Yoichi, or viewing him as a possession. So it makes sense that he would keep that hand most likely on him at all times, and that when he was fighting against All Might, it probably got destroyed or lost or whatever. So, you know, that's cool information that we get from the volume extras as well. And yeah, that is pretty much it. That's pretty much all of the volume extras that we're going to be having for volume 40 of My Hero Academia. So let me ask you this: what piece of information that you learned from the volume extras for volume 40 did you like the most? Leave your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!